You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast, episode 301. Merry Christmas to everyone out there in podcast land. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian,
and
Keith Cheatham.
We are here to give you an entertaining show, all things movies.
I have a problem.
What?
There is double the Klaus at this table.
They are here!
The Mrs. Klaus has invited the male Klaus so that they can rain destruction on the children together.
No, Santa's here to save us from the evilness.
Santa is going to put the children in his bag and run over them with the reindeer and sleigh, breaking their brittle bones.
Now we know what happened to Rudolph.
Wow.
Now we know why Rudolph doesn't exist. Santa's using him for his evil ways.
I do have something else to say that's a little bit more serious. Outside of just, Merry Christmas as well.
Christmas.
It is
Christmas.
finally in a few days, but also today specifically, as we are recording this live, it is my pappy's birthday.
Oh,
today is my
happy
Yeah,
birthday!
happy birthday, Dad!
Wait, what's it? Is that how it said in Frosty?
Oh, happy birthday! yeah.
Happy
And
birthday, Roger.
It is his
Yes.
birthday today. He's a big 6'1".
wow.
Yeah.
He's getting ever closer to that
I
Social
called
Security.
him as I was going
Yeah.
into work today, and I said, "Yo, you're an old fart now, aren't you?" So
he's
He
probably,
might just squeak by and actually get Social Security.
yeah.
I don't know. We're not going to.
No,
but-
it's going to be bankrupt. I'll have you know, listen, Santa has the choice. He
Yeah.
can be good. His light outshines hers. And we know that the great
The
conjuncture
light of
His-
Klaus,
his light is
they
much
draw
brighter.
the children in so that they can beat them over the head.
Hey, the great conjuncture was brighter than both of their lights.
Why is she not moving?
She doesn't move.
She doesn't move?
She stays solitary
listen,
Oh.
because she is
She
concentrating.
sits and watches and waits to pounce.
This is the last we'll see of the Klauses.
They'll crawl back into their Klaus holes for another year.
Klaus.
It's like Hobbiton in the North Pole.
Yes.
Klaus holes.
They slither down into their holes and hide.
Ooh, that's another thing I just noticed that we're all
Under
sipping.
the coal mines. That's where they
Sipping
get the
what?
coal.
We're all sipping on a new beverage this week.
this is part of
second.
the gift that Neil bought us. The other beer we did not get to try. I have to say, I do like it. Not as much as the 1985.
Yes.
I liked it more, but this is still good.
It's good.
No,
This
it is.
has much more of an IPA, that typical IPA.
Yeah,
taste.
I was gonna say it's definitely a little bit more bitter, hoppier. I prefer actually the 85, but I
was
would be
very
in the mood
smooth,
for this.
85.
Yeah, the
was,
85 was
yeah.
nice.
It just depends on what mood you're in, and I would. This is fantastic.
If I wanted an IPA, I would go to this for sure because it's still good.
Definitely more traditional, even a lighter. I would say lighter IPA than.
It's
than
still
most.
lighter than most. Not as light as that 1985 or 84 was. It's 84. Wonder Woman's 85, right?
No, 84 is Wonder Woman.
Okay,
Yes.
never mind.
And 85
Five
get
was the
those
beer.
mixed up.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh.
I know, which he's
Excuse me.
already, yeah.
I'm telling you, man, that's what beer does.
But is that how we're going to feel after we watch Wonder Woman? We'll know on Christmas Day.
That review along with Soul comes next week.
Yeah, we've got a lot. We got a lot
excited.
coming.
Both
We're
of those look
continuing
good.
our double reviews next week with both of those films. We've got 2 reviews this week, the last of our Christmas reviews and the last of our famous Santas. How about that?
And then we can finally crown a victor who is the best Santa.
Which we're going to get to, of course, after our reviews. But before we get to the ever wonderful review of the classic film, The Santa Claus, we've got another review. One that just hit Netflix, one that's been highly touted.
It has been. It's gotten lots of Oscar talk. It also is the last performance by Chadwick Boseman. And it's from Denzel Washington. It's another film based on a play by August
Wilson.
who was the playwright who made the play Fences. Denzel's currently in the middle. He's producing 9 of his plays into films. He produced Fences and also directed and starred in it. He didn't direct or star in this one, but he still produced it and is going to go on to produce 7 more. But here's the review of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. In 2016, Denzel Washington brought us the adaptation of Fences, based on the play of the same name by playwright August Wilson, which Denzel Washington himself had starred in. The film went on to be nominated for 4 Oscars, winning 1. This year, Denzel Washington has once again set out to bring us an adaptation of a play from August Wilson, though taking a step back from starring and directing and acting only as producer. Washington has nonetheless been the driving force behind these adaptations of Wilson's plays, this time bringing us Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a film that already has garnered Oscar talk. Directed by George C. Wolfe, who has directed both film and theater, and even worked with Denzel Washington in the past in theater productions, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, while based on the play of the same name, is a fictionalized story of the real-life Gertrude Ma Rainey, played by Viola Davis, one of the first and most famous professional blues singers, garnering the nickname the Mother of the Blues. The story takes place almost entirely at a small recording studio in Chicago during the 1920s, showcasing the struggle of black artists to be treated the same as white artists, something Ma Rainey does her best to ensure by making life for her manager and the recording studio owner a living hell. Contrasting her story is that of Levy Greens, portrayed by Chadwick Boseman, the trumpet player in Ma Rainey's band. Levy portrays the opposite side of Ma's same coin. More energetic and outgoing, yet capable of darkness, Levy's actions and dealings with those who have wronged him as he tries to escape Ma's shadow and create his own fame in a world where black people cannot get ahead, creates a contrast to how Ma handles similar situations, creating a commentary on social injustices of the time. The film is well made and enthralling. Driven by its sharp writing and dialogue, Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman both give phenomenal performances. But the entire cast should be praised. The back and forth between Boseman's character and the rest of the band especially creates the crux of the narrative, and themes as how each band member's age, personality, and experiences create a commentary on the world as they've experienced it. It also showcases the differing opinions and viewpoints on the culture as a whole, and how to deal with such injustices. Being based on a play, the film only has 2 major set pieces. Much like Fences, yet with solid editing and a dialogue-driven narrative, also like Fences, the story never grows boring or dull. And those 2 set pieces are all the film needs to tell its story. The film doesn't always work, however. Some holdovers in the story, more than likely from the play, do feel sometimes unnecessary, such as the subplot with Ma Rainey's love interest, Dussie, that while adding tension, as Levy also pursues Dussie, ultimately never goes anywhere anyway. Likewise, while making strong statements, I never felt the themes were driven or as clear as in the adaptation of Fences. Ultimately, the film is still strong and worthy of some of the Oscar talk it has received. And while I'm not sure Boseman or Davis are the best of the year at this point, I would still happily see Boseman get the nom, if not the win. While Ma Rainey's Black Bottom doesn't impress me as much as Washington's adaptation of Fences, it still is a fantastic film that has me looking forward to Washington's next August Wilson adaptation, which is already in the works. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is definitely a film worth checking out. I give Ma Rainey's Black Bottom 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars
Chris.
for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Black Bottom.
I just like the way it sounds when you just get a little soul in
I
there.
enjoyed that. I mean,
Black Bottom.
I like that type of music anyway, so I did enjoy. Though, granted, it's funny that in the film she argues about the fact that like the recording owner wanted to use Levy's version, which was faster, and she wanted the original. But it's funny because if you actually listen to the real Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, it's even slower than what they used in the film. So I'm like,
Oh,
it's
wow.
funny because they're complaining about updating it, but even the version in the film had a little bit more, I felt like, of a modern flair than the actual song
they,
did.
Song
they play it
itself,
at the end in the credits.
Yes,
like they play some of their actual music. Yeah.
and it's definitely a bit slower and more, which is fine because that's the blues. But it's just funny that they have like that's such a significant plot point but even the version in the film is a little bit faster than the
what
real
the
one.
original was. No, I honestly, it struck me because I guess I did not see anything leading up to this film. I knew it was just Chadwick Boseman's final film, and of course I knew early praises for him, early praises for Viola Davis and her portrayal.
Well, she gets nominated for pretty much everything.
Well,
she's
she
in.
deserves it.
And she is good. I'm not arguing. She is fantastic.
But it's funny because as I was watching this, I was actually not aware of Denzel producing this, and also it struck me as once I saw it in the credits and once I saw that it was based on a play by August Wilson, I thought, okay, all right, it had a Fences resemblance in terms of it just taking set
I
on
think
these.
Fences was the better film for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. But I still like this one. It's not as good as Fences, but I still liked it.
But I truthfully, I would agree with your score. 3 out of 4 stars. I thought it was entertaining. I actually enjoyed thoroughly the dialogue between. I thought the dialogue was very lively and realistic between the characters, and I ultimately thought that the way in which they bantered back and forth and they kind of ribbed each other, just it had a play-like sense of quality, and I think sometimes I prefer that even on screen. That
was
you
my
don't
favorite
get a
part
lot
of
times
the film,
in film.
was when the band were in the room where they practiced.
Right.
That actually every time they were in that room is when I loved the film the most.
Yeah.
And not that I didn't like
Well,
the other stuff.
I would say
I
that,
just liked
and
their
I
back
enjoyed.
and forth. And I felt most of the tension and emotion came from Boseman's portrayal in that room.
Yes.
That, and then also I did like the recording studio, like the when they were recording the music, and anytime you saw Maul's reaction, I thought again, I think Viola Davis knocked it out of the park. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see her get a nom. If not Chadwick Boseman.
I mean, I'd be happy to see Chadwick. And it's just like, it's still too early for me to say he absolutely deserves the win. And in fact, of the performances I've seen, I kind of put him and Riz Ahmed from The Sound of Metal neck because he was so good.
He was.
And it's hard to pick between them two, but I would say both of them were definitely better than Gary Oldman in Mank. And I mean, Gary Oldman was good in Mank.
No, Sean, I don't know.
Gary Oldman was good in Mank, but I would actually rather see either Boseman or Ahmed win.
Well, Sean, what about you? I know you didn't feel.
I gave it 2 out of 4.
Okay.
And that's only because I think we kind of talked about it before the show, which we always do, and then we don't end up discussing it on the show because we forget or
we
whatever.
Always do that.
But we kind of discussed how it's kind of left up to your interpretation of what the message from the film is supposed to be. And a lot of the messaging that I got was very negative and very much so another film that just pushes the narrative of white people exploiting black people, which
that did happen.
I know it did happen, but it doesn't happen every time. And I feel like you don't ever see a movie or anything from Hollywood that shows the opposite side of that coin. You only see the negative side. You don't see the 1,000 other stories that are much more positive.
See,
and I get that.
And I think the argument would be made on the other hand where it's like, well, actually that's all you ever see.
Yeah.
And it's not to give credence to either argument. I just think that
I would just say with this movie being set obviously in 1920s America and also being based on a play that was written in the 1960s when the civil rights movement was going on.
Right.
I do understand the narrative from that because it does come from a place where those things were a very big reality. And I mean, there are historical instances where black artists were like Levy, where his music was taken. There are instances where that had happened, where a black person had written a song and it was given to white people to perform, and the black person never got a chance.
Well, yeah, but like me and Brandon kind of discussed, your interpretation of what the producer's ultimate goal in not having Levy play his own music is kind of up. I mean, it may have just been, I don't really like your style. I like the song. I'm willing to pay you for it, even if it's only $5, which was a lot of money in 1927. But I'm going to buy the music from you outright. I'm not stealing anything or taking anything. I just don't want you playing it.
Well, and
if he didn't have to sell him the song, he gave it to him willingly. And that's where I'm kind of like, that's not exploitative as much as it was with Viola Davis's character. Yes, the way she gives her speech about how they only want my voice.
Once they got
as soon as they got it, they're done with me.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm treating them like
and
this.
I think
I understood that narrative completely, and I liked it. That was Levy's character and his spiel about everything that happened to him when he was a boy that drives his hatred for the white people. And I mean, it's very blatant that that's where his hatred comes from.
But I loved that because it wasn't just as how he treated other black people as well was with this disdain. And I love the fact that they didn't really paint. They gave him a little bit of sympathy, but they painted him as not necessarily a good character. He wasn't supposed to be this hero.
I know that, but it painted it as it's all the fault of the people who had their way with his mother. It's none of it's his own fault.
And see, and I didn't take that from it myself.
I mean, he stabs and kills his friend at the end of the film, and I'm like, that's on you,
Spoiler
dude.
alert!
You
Spoiler
can't.
alert!
Sorry,
Yeah,
major
spoiler.
It's been out for a week. If you haven't seen it now,
that completely shocked me, and I loved that moment.
It did shock me, but I'm like,
But I felt
that
like
was his choice. That wasn't anybody
Well, no,
else's
but
fault.
it's actually funny because I think a lot of the points you're making, Sean, I would agree with. But I think the way it struck me, especially from seeing the two dichotomies of Ma's relationship with the studio and even Levy's, is you kind of see
There's a contrast.
There's a contrast, but I also liked you saw Levy as this kind of young up-and-comer who had a chip on his shoulder, who was trying to figure out.
Even the other band members
Yeah,
pointed out
exactly.
They had good reason, and because they lived it longer for one, but also they handled it.
I
understand
out to him how he was wrong in the way he handled it.
And I get that.
But again, I think
in his mind, he's even as his friend is dying in his arms, he's still blaming him. Why did you do that? Why did you do that?
Well, that's
Why did
how
you
people
do that?
like that are. That's why I like that.
I know.
Yeah.
I just didn't.
But
I
think it was a heartbreak.
Like
That was actually one part of the film that I thought would have been more powerful had it been in a play, only because of the emotion and kind of the drawing of the conclusions of the film, which are somewhat left open-ended. And I didn't mind that because to me, I thought for the time period that it was set in and for what these characters go through throughout the film, what you're seeing is, yes, a racially charged situation from both Ma Rainey's perspective and Levy's.
Yeah.
But what I think was important was even Levy took issue with some of these older black men who he didn't see as mentors. He saw them as adversaries because he thought he kind of saw them as you all are keeping suppressed what you all have the ability to overcome, and I'm going to be that one that overcomes it. And he's like, you can sit here and tell me that I'm trying to suck up to the white man to get my way, to get my songs produced.
Yeah.
But really what it comes down
doing
to
the same thing she was doing.
is I'm actually doing it to get my way, and if that's the way I got to play it, then so be it. And what they were trying to say is, no. You don't understand what it is that who you're affecting, and ultimately the choices that you are making do have to go to the core of who you are.
Well,
and what choices do you want to make in your life that are going to affect the decisions down the road that you make. And I loved particularly the specific scenes with his, or at most times the bandmates who are trying to like kind of take him under their wing and say, look, no, we're trying to learn you something. And then there's also the situation of, no, he's left with
he thinks he knows.
He thinks he knows best.
I've known so many people,
I thought that,
and family members that have come from the same thing.
Right, I didn't see it so much as a color thing as much as a viewpoint.
Yes, it was one of those things where I know people that like nothing is ever their fault. It's always the circumstance. Well, it's not my fault that this happened, even though they made that decision. And I love that because he just felt so real to me in the fact that it's like. He doesn't want to take responsibility for some of his own actions, and even when they tell him, he's like, "Look, life is more than this. You could still be happy even in the circumstances you're given." And I loved a lot of that message.
I see that, and I completely agree with that. And it would have been if they would have left the movie and had it end right there with his friend dying in his arms. That would have been one thing. But then you take the whole idea of this is your responsibility. You're responsible for the life you just took. You're responsible for how you live your life. Everything the older gentlemen are trying to teach him, you completely take that away by showing the all-white band playing his song at the end of the movie. And I'm like, you completely took the focus off of that.
Doesn't have that scene. That was
that was
added specifically
again,
for
this
the
is
movie.
coming from. I didn't even know Fences was based on a play.
And truth be told, I will say that was one thing that Sean and I kind of talked about a little bit off camera, but I want to reiterate here, and that is, I think that had this film been made and come out at the same time Fences did, we would have a different conversation. I think in Light, part of the reason why it seems so racially charged is because of the atmosphere that we're in now.
Yeah.
And I think because of the George Floyd protests and the riots throughout this whole year, I think you have a movie like this that ultimately I think transcends. I think it is very deeply rooted in 1920s black culture and black thinking and understanding. And I mean, it's like that's the thing. I respect Denzel Washington. I've heard him speak in terms of I know where he comes from as a person of I think about the human, the being first, more so than the color of the skin.
Yep.
And it's like for me, I took this as more of a, okay, if I can take this out of the time period in which this is now, which I think so much of the praise it's getting is falsely attributed from the critics who want to praise it because of the racially charged atmosphere, and they want to see this as, oh, we're promoting something that is uniquely black in these fantastic black performances, and it definitely has that.
Oh, absolutely.
But the merit alone of the story and the actual characters, I think, is again well beyond. It transcends race. And for me, had this been 5 years ago and come out, I think the conversation would be a little bit different. But it's just because of the atmosphere we're in today that it becomes much more charged.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's
agree.
necessarily a bad thing. I think it's kind of a good thing to stir up conversation. But again, I think that's kind of where it's like to try to divorce yourself from the idea of, this isn't really talking about a theme or a narrative right now that's being instituted, but rather, can we get on the level of what these people were thinking back then and what they were feeling, and is that accurate? And I think when you think of 1920s, Chicago, I honestly, I believe
their performances definitely grounded me in the fact that yes, people dealt with this. This is authentic. Like, I mean, if it wasn't for their performances, it would have been even more racially charged in my mind. That was just it was Boseman's performance and the heat that he had, like, because of what happened in his early life and the way he didn't really want to take the advice of the men, because what they were giving him was not only wisdom, but it was biblical in most of it.
I love
which his rant at God. Well, his rant at God was just like, and that I think that might have been another thing that kind of frustrated me, because I'm not somebody that feels like God has abandoned anybody, and for him to think that God had abandoned all black people, that really bothered me, because I'm thinking of what they faced and are still facing, and if anything, God is with you, and that's why. And it hurt my heart to see a guy cursing God like that. And I understand that's part of his performance.
Yeah.
It was awesome,
and I love
and
that.
it pissed me off because he was doing such a good. It was believable.
It pissed Cutter off too because he punched
off.
him straight in the
And
face, and I love that.
I'm just like,
he's
no,
you don't talk that way about
he
my
didn't
God.
abandon you. You wouldn't be there if he had abandoned you.
Well, and I think that ultimately too is kind of what the men themselves are trying to confront him with, and ultimately are trying to convey is that no. You are off your rocker because you've seen things you should have never seen, because you've had things happen to you that shouldn't have happened to you. You're in a position where, of course, I could see it's kind of like the scene in Signs when Mel Gibson is holding his son's chest, and he doesn't have his medicine, and he's breathing from the asthma, and he's like, I hate you, don't do this to me again. And you sense that anger of knowing there is nothing else within your own power and own being that can escape the bondage you're in. And it's that irony of no, your freedom, the freedom that these men are talking about comes from that very thing you're cursing.
Yes.
And yet I think because of that exchange in the film, it's underscored even more.
Yeah.
Well, and
that was there.
Because, I was just gonna say, because I felt like it does at least show you both sides. It didn't just have like one person cursing God and like let that be the end of it. Because I did love the fact
I
you do
did
have
appreciate
the
that.
other
the man who was willing to fight for his
who he
faith.
was like, no, you don't say those things about my God.
Yes.
Yeah, and I loved that.
I did too. I appreciated that, because after this rant, and I was just like, man, this is like, not only is it tearing down, not only is it throwing gas on racial sensitivity, it's also tearing down my God. And I'm just, it really bothered me, that scene. But again, that goes back to the fact that his performance was so good that it hurt me, the viewer, watching it. It made me infuriated too. I mean, and if the guy didn't get up and punch him, then I was going to hit the TV. I was just like, man, this is blasphemous. Like, this is just tearing at me. And so that was honestly that scene, and the scene where she leaves the studio and stands like a pouting baby at her car, waiting for the producer or the manager to beg her to sign the papers.
Well, and I think
I was just like, it was really good acting. I hated her for it, because I'm just like, you're just,
you know what she's doing.
Exactly.
But at the same time, that's what I also, again, I loved about the characters in the film, is it's like, what I think you see that on her face at the end. You see her
when
I don't want to get I don't want to give it everything away, but it's like you see it on her face that it's like she has nothing else anymore to hold over their head.
Yeah.
She gave them what she wanted. It was kind of like dance monkey dance.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there it is. That's it.
Yep.
And they're done with her and they toss her aside. And I think that in and of itself is the epitome of what the film shows in that time period in between these characters. Is you have two hugely, I think hugely diverse characters in the way that they react to situations of being abused and of being taken advantage of. And I think that is ultimately the essence of, these are the dark places of human nature. You don't have to be a certain kind of race or color to experience it. But yes, when you are pushed and subverted to that, absolutely, I could see that would become, how you would react. Absolutely.
On a lighter note, for the movie, because there was a lot of the humor I loved, and I absolutely
I genuinely laughed throughout.
I love her nephew. He's gonna say this part, and he's just like, you've seen it,
yeah.
It's like, this is perfect.
But no, absolutely. Look, I mean, you could tell by our conversation here, it's definitely a controversial film. It's worth at least checking out and seeing for yourself.
I think it's worth a watch.
You've got our. In the comments section, you can write if you've seen it. If you want to know more about it, you can also reach out to us by emailing us. That's right, RMPodcast@redmoonproductions.com. Tell us all about it there. Let us know what you think about the film. Mm-hmm. But I think we're time to move on. 3 out of 4 stars from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
It's time to get into a little Christmas cheer.
Yeah, I think let's move right into finally. This is going to do it. This is our final Christmas review. Here is our review of The Santa Claus.
Merry Christmas! With just a few days left until one of the greatest days of the year, we wrap up our Christmas-themed reviews by tackling a film whose Santa isn't just famous, but perhaps the most iconic and loved version to hit the big screen. While many A-listers have donned the red coat and boots, none did so after causing the previous Santa to fall off their roof. That's right, this week we review The Santa Claus, starring Tim Allen. Released in 1994, The Santa Claus, directed by John Pasquin, has gone on to become an iconic Christmas classic, with a massive fan base. The film garnered 2 sequels and is aired continuously every year. The film is essentially to the 90s what Elf would be to the early 2000s. Watching the film, it is easy to see why it has cemented its place amongst the greatest holiday favorites. Starring Tim Allen as Scott Calvin, a divorced toy salesman working for a large toy manufacturer, Scott is allowed custody of his son, Charlie, played by Eric Lloyd, for Christmas Eve. Charlie no longer believes in Santa after his mom, Laura, played by Wendy Crewson, and her new husband, psychiatrist Dr. Neil Miller, portrayed by Judge Reinhold, who both stopped believing in Santa at an early age, agreed it is in Charlie's best interest to know the truth. Scott, however, disagrees and wishes to maintain Charlie's childhood as long as possible. That night, when Scott and Charlie hear a noise on the roof, Scott scares a man dressed as Santa while investigating, causing the man to fall off his roof. The man mysteriously disappears, and Scott is left with nothing but his suit, a bag of gifts, and a sled led by reindeer on his roof. Convinced to put the suit on by his son, Scott and Charlie are soon thrown into an adventure, delivering gifts that ends with them at the North Pole, and Scott discovering he has now inherited the title of Santa. The Santa Claus has everything you would expect from a great family film, let alone a classic Christmas movie. The film never plays to the lowest common denominator, or dumbs itself down for children, offering intelligent jokes and some innuendo for older audiences, while also packing itself full of clean humor and Christmas wonder all ages can enjoy. Tim Allen is a reluctant Santa whose faith is slowly restored, and who slowly restores the faith and childlike wonder of those around him, is perfect, offering plenty of quick wit and cheeky humor. By pairing Allen's character with his son Charlie, whose belief is waning, his ex-wife Laura, who no longer has a sense of wonder, and her new husband Neil, who is unable to imagine anything outside of cold hard facts, the movie allows itself the ability to instill magic in a world that seems to have none. The contrast between Allen's quick wit and off-the-cuff humor, and his initial unwillingness to accept his role as Santa, to the dry and humorless characters around him he slowly brings them around as he was brought around, creates the heart of the film. Simply put, the movie works because it grounds itself in the real world before taking us into the wondrous and fantastic. Unlike its sequels, which are more childish and outlandish as they went, the Santa Claus offers plenty of magic hidden inside our own real-world setting, allowing for the plausibility that maybe, just maybe, there truly is a Santa Claus. I give the Santa Claus 3.5 out of 4 stars.
3.5 stars.
This is an extra little birthday gift for my father because the Santa
does he
Claus
love this movie?
He likes this movie?
This is his favorite Christmas movie. Well,
Really?
Yeah, he loves the Santa Claus.
That couldn't happen to be why you rated it so high.
No,
could it?
I mean I have seen it a lot growing up, but he loves Tim Allen in general. He watched Home Improvement. He loves Last Man Standing. I mean, my dad loves Tim Allen.
Well, and I will say, like, I do think that he does a faithful job as Santa. And I mean, that's kind of what our whole theme has been about this entirety of the Christmas season.
I love that he has to learn to be Santa.
Yeah,
because I love that's like what I love so much about the film is that like through finding that belief in himself again, he's able to bring that out in like everyone else around him that like are basically calling him crazy and insane and trying to take his child away.
One of the things about this movie and about Christmas Chronicles that I really enjoy is the idea of adults that have lost their joy and their belief in the magic and in the fantasy of Santa Claus, and to have them rediscover it, like in Christmas Chronicles when the police officers and he's telling them about telling him about what it is he wanted for Christmas and things like that. I love that kind of stuff, and this is one of those movies that what's his name, Judge
Reinhold.
Judge Reinhold, like when he at the end of the film finally,
a weenie whistle.
it's so silly,
it's so ridiculous.
But at the same time, you can really see the joy coming back into his heart.
Well, and I love the scene with like her getting the game, and then also her sitting there saying like when she sees, I mean, for one, this is a divorced woman who's seeing her husband change in front of her eyes, and when she's like, oh my gosh, you're real, like. It is this kind of magical moment of it can't be explained.
Yeah.
And I do love that nature of the film. I mean, I will say, watching it again, I gave it 3 out of 4, not quite 3.5. Part of it was just the idea that I was just like, some of the CGI is a little bad.
Yeah.
Well, for its time.
I know.
It doesn't hold up, but for its time.
It doesn't hold up. And then,
I mean, what CGI from the 90s really
I know, and I know that's nitpicking, but then there was also... I will say the kind of quickness. I like the initial, like he falls off the roof, he catches it, he's freaking in his boxers, he's cold, so he throws on the suit.
Yeah.
And I thought that was good. But then the fact that he kind of for the rest of the night goes along with being Santa, and he never once is like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, okay.
He kind of argues a few moments, but to be
But then he just goes along
but
with
then
it.
the kid's like, Dad, and he's like, all right, fine. And I mean, it's a little easy.
It's more about indulging and entertaining your children,
but I mean, for being a family film, I was willing to kind of like, it's fine. I mean, he's got to get there somehow.
Yeah.
And I just really love the fact that like I said in the review that. Unlike the sequels, this movie doesn't dumb anything down. Like, I mean, there are some sillier moments, but there's plenty of innuendos and intelligent jokes along with clean humor. And it's not the sequels really get childish and more campy. And I mean, you have Toy Santa, and then you have Jack Frost.
I know.
It's it's like it goes from being something that was actually smart and accessible from all ages to being something that really is just like for children.
Well, and I thought it was very witty. I thought the things that it does kind of introduce and the way in which it opens, like you say in the review, it opens up this world of kind of believing, and
it's something that feels like you can almost see the magic in the real world.
Yes.
Like in the second ones, it's so over the top that it's like, okay, now we're just in another like Santa Claus Christmas film. This one, I mean, yes, it's a Christmas film, but it's something that it's like, okay, it does feel tangible, like something that could actually happen.
And
in
it's
our
got
real
heart,
world.
and it's got a good message, and I think it's like it layers on the kind of believability throughout, and you understanding like as even he comes to terms with accepting his fate and what he is now.
I love the police
like
scene
that.
in this film when he's just Père Noel. I love it. I mean, he's naming all the different names for Santa.
By far one of the best.
I love it.
Alrighty, guys, just absolutely 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Well, we got to rank our
Santa
Santas
Claus.
now.
We do.
Yeah.
Who was the best celebrity Santa?
Well, Keith,
it sure wasn't Paul Giamatti. We know that much.
Nope.
We've all said it, but Keith, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Because you have reviewed all these films.
All right.
You're our official reviewer.
Well, I mean, sadly, again, Paul Giamatti's in dead last.
Okay.
And this is a little tough. I will say I'm keeping Tim Allen at the top. He's my favorite Santa.
Okay. So now we got the two in the middle.
Tim Allen's at the top. It was very hard between Kurt Russell and Mel Gibson because even though Mel Gibson's a non-traditional Santa, it's hilarious. But I ended up I put Kurt Russell on top. So it's Tim Allen, Kurt Russell, Mel Gibson, then Paul Giamatti. And to be fair, Paul Giamatti's like way down below the table here. Because Mel Gibson was still good. He just was a non-traditional Santa, and I love that. But I liked the attitude and like the I felt like Kurt Russell, like even though he was
definitely the jolliest of all of them.
He was great, and he did,
completely
and he made it his own, and I loved that.
Oh, wow.
But I do love
him
Tim
best.
Allen just a little bit more.
Who was Kurt Russell?
I like Kurt Russell, Tim Allen, Mel, and then Paul.
Okay.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're all putting Paul.
Well,
Giamatti
He's
down there
he's
the
at
bottom.
the bottom.
Look, he's a
Kurt Russell
phenomenal
just
actor.
looks
Fantastic
like him.
actor, but he was in a terrible film
He
with
is
terrible
terrible.
direction, and
But-
he just no.
Yeah.
I'm actually I'm changing it up. I think
Uh-oh.
we all got different ones.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
that's
great.
good.
That's
cool,
good.
yeah.
We all have Tim Allen at the top.
No, he had Kurt Russell at the top.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
You have Kurt Russell at the top.
Yeah.
So we all have different lists.
yeah.
Mine is actually Tim Allen at the top, and then I'm going with Mel Gibson.
Oh wow,
as my number 2.
man.
Because it was so radically different.
Yeah, that's,
And again, I go back to that
liked
one line.
But something about Kurt Russell, when I see Kurt Russell as
No,
Santa,
and
I
that's-
feel warm. I'm like, okay, that's
Trust
Santa.
me,
Like,
it was
I mean,
hard.
you know?
It was
But
hard
see,
to make
when
a
I
choice.
but when I see Tim Allen, I just see Tim the Tool Man.
Oh.
Like I don't even see
well,
him
there's
as Santa Claus.
there's even the part in the movie where he's just like, ho, ho, ho,
Yes.
and he does it
Yeah.
intentionally as
Yeah.
a throwback
Yeah.
to that show. But no, I just think I do too love Kurt Russell's enthusiasm, but I just believe that Mel Gibson's like different take on Santa and him being a gun-toting again that one
You just
line.
like the scene of him biting into that cookie.
Yes, and he's driving down the road like
Yeah.
I'm happy now that Christmas is back on track. But I just love when he says that line and he's like, "You don't think I got jolly or what?" He's like, "You don't think I became Santa by being jolly, do you?"
Yeah.
And I just thought that underscored you know what? He's got to take a lot of crap. And he's got to deal with a lot of people who deserve coal.
Corporate sponsors.
Yeah.
And all, I love the
Government
corporate contracts
checks and buyout.
Yes.
So no, I did. I thought, so we all have varying different lists.
Yeah.
But I think that absolutely the Santas, the celebrity Santas have been a fun venture this year.
If there's anything we've proven, though, it's that Paul Giamatti is a horrible Santa.
No doubt.
True.
No doubt. That's absolutely bar none. We're not going to argue with that. All right, guys, I think we're ready to move on to our headlines. Let's roll that footage. All right, that's right. It's headline time. We got some headlines for everybody out there. We had a breaking one. I did not include it. But it is absolutely, I think, probably our top story for this evening. It was going to be, Tom Cruise's rant. That wasn't really breaking. It was just funny. And if you get a chance to go and listen to the audio, the link in our description will have that audio. And it is absolutely worth a watch.
You should have linked the
I
one
did.
with. Did you do the one with him and Christian
It's-
Bale?
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be in the podcast description
Man,
notes. But
it's epic.
somebody edited Christian Bale's rant from like 4 or 5 years ago with
Tom
Cruise.
Cruise, and it's great.
It's absolutely
They're just
phenomenal.
fighting with each other.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And it sounds dead up like they're just going back and forth. So that was going to be our headline.
Just 2 nut jobs going at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One nut job,
I'd say-
one method actor.
Yeah.
So.
Which, I mean, what's the difference, really?
Yeah.
But yes, let's talk about our big headline, which is MGM.
Mm.
We knew it was coming. Looking for a buyer. They want to sell it all.
Yeah, they're
Hawk
holders.
that property.
When they went bankrupt several years ago, they got bought out by a lot of hedge funding companies, and now they're saying, well, y'all aren't making us money anymore, so we're going to make money by selling you off.
Well, why not?
I mean, yeah.
They've only got one decent property,
I mean,
and that's
James
Bond.
Bond's the only thing they,
Yep.
and that's funnily enough, the only thing they're worth is the worth of James Bond, and that's $5.5 billion.
Which we knew for some time.
Yeah.
We
That's
knew
just
for
Which is
a
still a
while.
lot of money.
One franchise.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's all, that's all they're
but
worth.
here's the
I know
thing.
it.
This also points back to when we heard the hubbub of people looking for a buyer of the latest Bond film, No Time to Die. There were huge figures being thrown around from both Apple and at the time, who was the other one? I forget. Was it Disney? It was Disney.
Was it Disney?
I think it was
don't know.
Disney.
Right now, they said the parties that they're looking at to be most interested in buying MGM are Apple, Comcast, Amazon, and here's the odd one, Facebook. Which I mean, hey, I mean they had their little video thing that they tried to do.
They
and,
do.
Facebook has enough. Mark Zuckerberg just needs to go away.
Hey, look, hey, Jeff Bezos, he's on the same page. They both want to take over the world.
That's true.
So you can sit here and talk about Mark Zuckerberg all you want, but it's like he's in
Could
the
you
same
imagine
boat.
the fake news that would be in films if Facebook was in charge
well,
of it?
here's the thing.
What are
is
you
that
talking about?
They
They
also
would
talked
eliminate
about
fake news.
there's a Chinese market
Well,
interested. So
They'd
I
eliminate
mean,
real news.
you imagine if like because they said that it's also a possibility for a Chinese market to try to buy MGM. Could you imagine
I'd
as
rather-
James Bond owned
I
by
don't
China?
know. That would be
You
crazy.
have fake news either
James
way.
Bond
Look,
ill.
If there, that's that's what I think would be so funny. Think about it.
He'd be
You
fighting
have
villains on the wall of China.
The one.
Him and Matt Damon would be taking on
You
Spectre.
literally the one thing you could depend on is screwing over like everybody who would be on board in the PC culture would be they don't it's like look James Bond can be black, he can be a woman, but he cannot be or freaking Asian. That's the one thing everybody would be on board with.
And why
That's
not?
terrible.
So un-PC.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, and even though they haven't been mentioned, someone did make a joke online. They said, "I bet Disney buys them," and I mean, Disney's bought everything
Hey.
else, so why not at this point?
I was gonna say that. I mean, they're just sweeping up every major franchise they can.
yeah,
So
they
this
have
would just add
Aliens, they
another
have
one.
Predator, they have Star Wars, Marvel, Avatar.
look,
So
this
Oh
is-
man,
this
I
is-
didn't know they had Predator.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was Fox. Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah.
They literally do.
It's
I mean,
insane.
you have to at some point, just like we had the big tech argument today with Google and Facebook and them wanting to break up Twitter. And it's like you have to at some point say, when is Disney too big?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
at some point, it's like, yeah, you can sit here and say there's other competition, but damn, they have a lot of
lot.
properties.
Yes.
And here's the thing. I mean,
Yes.
I've been fine with mostly fine with them having Star. I mean, more so now than when the sequel trilogy came out. But I mean, Marvel's been fine. Pixar, when they bought Pixar, made sense since they had such a close partnership anyway.
Yeah.
And I was excited about Fox just for no other reason
and now
than
look,
X-Men
that's
and
why I
Fantastic
think it's
Four,
interesting that Apple is in the game too, because they both have a stake in each other's company.
Yes.
Apple is now granted. Bob Iger left Apple's board back when they relaunched Disney Plus because they saw it was going to be in direct
It'd be
conflict with Apple
conflicting,
TV
yeah.
Plus. But it's still interesting because I'm like, I know that Apple and Disney are. I mean, hell, even just this last week, Apple premiered the new Beatles film,
Yeah.
or Disney
Oh.
Plus premiered the new Beatles behind the scenes look from Peter Jackson.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's an Apple TV Plus exclusive
Yeah.
when it comes out. So it's interesting that
I
they
am
do
really interested
have.
in that.
Oh, it looks fantastic.
Yes.
Well, if he does with that what he did with
They Shall Not Grow
That Shall Not
Old,
Grow
yeah.
Old.
And it does.
I mean, I love Peter Jackson and I love the Beatles, so I'm excited about
I'll
it.
say just the footage I saw, the 5 minutes,
Yeah.
it's worth watching.
Well,
Yeah.
there's behind the scenes footage that has never been seen
Oh,
before.
he
like
states at the
recording
beginning of
sessions
the
and everything.
He said it was like 500 hours,
Man.
and he said they're whittling it down to try to. And it's about how I think the term that's been used is this is supposed to be showing their breakup, but how it was like a peaceful breakup, like it wasn't tarnished in all the
I mean,
tabloids
still,
that people were
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about back
It
then.
wasn't because I mean they were still cordial with each
It
other
wasn't a
even after
toxic
they weren't a
breakup.
group. So I
Yeah.
mean they were still friendly. So
But no, I do think. Look, we knew MGM was in trouble for a while. We knew Bond. We knew when they were looking for buyers because they have depended on
I mean,
Bond.
What is MGM? I mean, look at how like they've declared bankruptcy like 3 times. So I mean,
Well, and they have depended on this franchise to carry their weight.
Yeah.
For the entire last decade, and even before then. And so, with that being the case, it is kind of questionable. It's like they don't have anywhere to go. They're gonna have to sell. But now, who is going to be the highest bidder? And again, does this mean that MGM, just like the 20th Century Fox banner, goes away? It's just 20th Century.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well,
does
depending
MGM
on who
go
buys
away?
it, they may keep the MGM brand. because I could see, some things like Amazon or Comcast or Apple wanting to keep that MGM, even Facebook, because I'm sure
It's just such
they'd like to
a
have
well-known
yeah.
IP.
Almost all of the ones you've mentioned might do that. Disney would not.
I think Disney might
Oh,
not. Yeah,
no.
they would. Well, I think
I
part of
do. And then the only reason I think they would is because, again, so much of it is about recognition and what do people recognize. And if you know
true,
MGM,
but they took the Fox out of 20th Century.
yeah, but everybody.
Yeah.
When you
It would
say
be Disney
20th
MGM.
century
Yeah.
Fox, you think Fox was the last name in that whole
Yeah.
lineup. It's like you could say 20th century and
People
people
still
know
know
what
it.
you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I think MGM is a well-known brand, and if anything, it has become synonymous with just Bond in the last 20 years. So if they don't have any other IP, it may either go by the wayside or it may just be launched as like the Bond franchise.
It is crazy
name.
though to think, because MGM used to be one of the biggest studios. It was
Yeah.
a part of
Yeah.
the Big Five, and now it's nothing.
Well,
Look at Fox. So
Yeah.
it is crazy how fast things can flip.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that.
In the
You know,
golden age of
some of
Hollywood,
these-
MGM was at the top.
Yeah.
Right, we see that in Mank.
Yeah. Louis B. Mayer.
Yep.
But it is interesting because I think this is obviously we are in the final days of MGM. No doubt, I think it's going to be sold. I think this is kind of the writing on the wall. I don't think it's going to be a shakeup.
Writing on the
Ew,
wall.
just say-
This is the Bond song.
I didn't even catch that
That
at
was
all. He
good.
didn't either.
He didn't either. He said it. I'm like, that's the
Had
name
no
of the
clue.
That's the name of the Bond theme song. Oh.
Wow.
I think for this movie, isn't that the one
No,
that Billie
I-
Eilish came out with?
I don't think so. I think that was the one Sam Smith sang.
Maybe.
What?
I think, yeah.
I'm a
They
Google it.
sang that. He goes by they.
They.
Oh,
Wow.
wait, whoops. I didn't mean he goes by they.
No. They go by they.
They go by they. Sam Smith. I'm pretty
Yes,
sure.
it was the Sam Smith one. You're right.
And
so it was
that
the
was
last
that
one.
Spectre?
Spectre.
Okay, yeah.
That was the
But
last
no,
one.
I think this is only going to breed good things. Obviously, we knew for the time being this was going to be Daniel Craig's last Bond film. I know a lot of people were like, we don't know that. No,
It's-
he's
no,
been done for a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think this is going to seal the deal
Especially
even
as
more.
long as this is drug out.
He's
it's
been the
like,
longest
Yeah.
performing Bond. I mean, other than who was the other one? The longest one?
Well,
Roger
Sean
Moore?
Connery.
Sean
Or Sean
Connery, I think,
Connery?
is equal, and it might have been Roger Moore because only one of them has done more, and
But
it might be more. but-
I mean, there's no
More,
doubt
more.
he's cemented his acting career in being Bond,
Yeah.
and he's done other things since, and
Yeah.
he wants to.
He's had a
expand.
good run, and to be fair, these haven't come like they meant to come out more like one after the other, but they, from one reason or another, there have been delays in like the last 3 Bond movies. So really, his tenure got stretched out even further than I think even he intended,
Yeah.
because it wasn't like make the movie, like take a year off, make the next movie. You had a few that had several years in between before they were able to get the next into production.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Man, I was just thinking
I
about
think it's
it.
just going to bode well.
Man, had Chadwick Boseman lived on, he could have been Bond.
He could have been a good black.
He
Bond.
could have been Bond.
I know everybody
I-
says
I-
Idris
I
Elba, but I
think
could
Idris
see
Elba-
Idris Elba's too old.
I don't think so.
He's in his 50s, man.
but so
He's
is
old.
Daniel Craig.
I
And he's
understand
freaking
now he is,
ripped.
but he wasn't when he started.
Maybe
that was
not.
what? Not how many movies has he done?
He's been in the last.
This is
It's been in a
5.
decade.
This is his
Is it
fifth one.
5?
This is
Yeah,
his
but
fifth
it's
one.
been like almost 15 years or
Yeah.
so.
I mean,
Since
when
Casi-
So I'm just saying-
Casino
Royale
Royale
was
was like
07 or
yeah,
06.
Yeah, it was.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
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 So I'm just saying, man, Idris Elba starting right now, he'd be old.
True.
It depends on how many he did. If he only stuck around for 1 or 2 movies,
Yeah,
I
but
mean that would
man.
be a short tenure. Yeah.
But it is one of those things where it's like, so really MGM's not being sold, Bond is being sold.
Yeah.
That's really all it is, because
Oh,
MGM does.
all they
I mean,
got.
now granted, there is probably an entire back catalog that MGM owns, or they may have
Well, I'm
already
sure,
sold that.
but
It is interesting
Yeah.
because I don't think the name is going away. I
That's
think
the
it
Wizard
has,
of Oz too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
MGM still own
they own
Wizard
the
of
Wizard
Oz?
of Oz. Yep.
Wait, was that? I thought that was Paramount.
No.
I'm pretty sure.
Is it MGM?
The Lion roars at the beginning of.
Well, I'm thinking of the lion roaring in
That's
the Wizard of
MGM.
Oz.
That's MGM.
It's MGM.
No, I'm talking about like the lion.
I
the
know
cowardly
that.
lion. No, you did-
yeah, produced by Metro Goldwyn Mayer.
Okay. But see, that's the thing. I don't know what properties they've sold. I don't know if literally Bond is the only property they own. They could have
Well, here's
sold
the
off
thing,
the
'cause I
Hawk-
know,
They could have hawked all their
The
properties.
Wizard of Oz is on HBO Max. I wonder if they sold that. To,
Oh,
I wonder if
maybe
they sold that
already
to
sold
Warner
it.
Brothers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, but
They
that would be
had to.
interesting.
Have. They've had to. They've
I mean, like I said,
they've been hemorrhaging money
yeah,
forever.
they've probably sold almost everything
And
already.
now Bond is all they've got left. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, they can't live on that alone, especially when you have Wonder Woman coming out in China and it does dismal. It literally is number 2 behind a local film. It made $18 million, and it's like they were looking for it to be a mainstay in places where theaters are actually open.
Yeah.
And if it's not even performing well, it's like,
Do you
is
think
this
that's
spell doom for the box office in general?
How did Mulan do over in China? It didn't do good in China either, did it?
Well, I don't know if they ever.
Or did that even come out in China?
It
I
did-
was
no, it
thinking,
did,
I was
but
thinking a movie with a female lead in China wouldn't sit well, and that's
No,
why I was
think
just thinking Wonder Woman.
It did sell well, but I don't. They never released the data on where it did well and where it didn't. I think they just said overall
okay.
it achieved what they wanted to.
Okay.
With releasing
I
it
was
on
curious
Disney
about
Plus
that.
early and within theaters across
Yeah,
the
because
world.
I mean that's a culture that puts women down.
It-
so.
yeah,
well,
just-
and they bent over backwards to please the
It flopped in
Chinese.
China.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, it said
Okay,
even
that
though
doesn't surprise me.
it says even though Disney tailored Mulan for China, it still never had a chance at the mainland box office.
Yeah.
Well,
it
I
may
think
not have anything to do with that, but I'm just saying that is
it did
that
23 million
in their culture.
China
That's
though, so that's better than Wonder Woman's doing so far. But
Well,
that's
and it's interesting because it's like you think. I mean, China has, of course, its own culture, but it is
well,
interesting
they're
that
also
a lot
very
of
strict
times
on what they allow to be
Yeah,
shown.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but I also think too that I mean, yeah, we knew Star Wars as uniquely an American culture.
yeah, it flops in
Yeah.
China all
it
the time.
flops in China, but there's a lot of things too that do really. I mean, Marvel's done really well across the world, and so it's one of these things where.
Which is crazy
I
because they have
think-
Captain America. You would think
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
but it's interesting to think. I wonder what kind of pop culture, like us going to the film, like to the movies.
You know what the Chinese
and
love?
us driving up the box office numbers. I wonder if that does prove to be a big change in China's box office over time, or if that drives them to the box office. I mean, it's interesting that
Yeah.
as long as we're in the tank and we suck and not going to the box, not going to the theaters, I wonder if that's also China just being like, well, we'll go see our local films, but we're not going in droves either.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You know what they do go in droves to see? Transformers. They love Transformers.
gosh,
I
yeah.
don't get it.
because it's freaking
Hasbro.
Hasbro, and it's just like I'm telling you.
But Hasbro,
they went Michael
They,
Bay.
they make all the toys in China.
Do they?
I don't know. I'm just
Okay.
Probably. I'm sure they have that made in China on them. Yeah,
Well, I'm sure they
just
do
like
now.
to see
I
crap
thought-
blow up.
Yeah.
I mean that's all it is.
they're like giant robots.
Giant robots.
Giant robots.
That's it.
Reminds them of Gundam and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's
That's
Japan.
Is that Japan?
That's
Japan.
Japanese
See,
culture.
because Godzilla is too.
So you can't- you
what
can't
does-
get
what does
them-
China have like that?
The Great Wall.
That's it.
Matt Damon.
That's it.
Mongolians.
Well, they don't have any culture.
I
So
mean,
they
they
got
don't have. They don't have
Mongolians.
Mongolians. Mongolians attack them.
Right.
So.
Well, let's just say they have a culture. I just don't know what their culture. Their culture doesn't spread over here.
Oppression.
We don't.
Censorship.
I'm talking more so the government. I
Right,
feel,
right.
I feel bad for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Chinese people themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't ever consume what they put out.
Hey, Chinese food's great.
Made in America.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say my sweet and sour chicken.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, I think we're ready to move on to our Vices segment. No, Vices, not Vices this week. That was last week.
Oh my
gosh.
goodness.
I'm ahead of the game.
Man.
I'm behind.
You
Let's
can't
move
do
on.
Vices. We got something special planned
We
for this
do.
week's.
We got our good old multimedia segment.
Multimedia. Multimedia.
Multimedia.
I like the multimedia section.
You do?
I was like,
Daggone it. I popped the logo up.
hey, what's wrong with logos?
Nothing. I wanted everybody to see that big, beautiful new art that we had.
That's
That's
right.
all it was.
I love it.
No, we
Merry
got a great
Christmas.
topic this week.
We're doing something a little. We actually have discussed doing this in the past
have.
and never actually did it until we finally made the commitment to do this.
Well, we used to have a TV show segment. We used to have where we would review TV shows. But then it's like we never really had enough. Like Game of Thrones was going on at the time. The series finale for it was coming up, and we were talking about that. And then we could branch off and talk
know
about old sitcoms.
the only other
and
time I
stuff.
think we really talked about series is me and Sean talked about The Dark Crystal, and we also talked about The Witcher. But
Yes.
Yes.
But it's like here's the thing. What we're going to talk about is not very Christmas oriented,
No.
but it is. And I'm going to point out why it is.
wanna
I
hear it.
agree.
My mom, and I brought this
Oh,
story
yeah.
up
Yeah.
a lot on the podcast, always loved to watch this series around Christmas.
Well, the original.
The original.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it just, for some reason, is this ultimate battle between good and evil. And she just, I don't know, wanted to
Made her feel good, didn't
watch this series in the background while she was decorating for Christmas. does not have
Here's the thing,
really.
I used to watch it a lot around Christmas. I don't
Really?
know why. Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
know why.
understand it. And she would never finish it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just to start it, and then after about maybe 2 hours in, okay, let's put on some, Johnny Mathis. We're done. We're done with The Stand.
It is kind of odd
So that's
to watch that around Christmas.
I love Lord of the Rings around Christmas. Don't know why.
well, because it came out during Christmas. That
Maybe,
is
maybe that's why.
I definitely like Lord of the Rings around Christmas is awesome.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's awesome any time of the
It just,
year.
just
Well,
feels
yeah.
good.
I mean, you can always.
Anyways, we haven't really said what we're talking about. There's a new adaptation of The Stand.
the miniseries
Yeah.
It is
on
a
HBO Max.
it is a new limited series. It's not on HBO
It's
Max.
on CBS All Access.
Sorry.
CBS All Access.
Whoops.
If you subscribe, if you don't subscribe, then
little tired.
then you get screeners.
Right.
From HBO Max, and you're like, where'd this come
Yeah,
from?
how did
Yeah.
HBO
Look at
manage this? But yeah, it's it was originally planned to be a film adaptation that was turned into another miniseries from director Josh Boone, who did The Fault in Our Stars and New Mutants. And
You lost me.
Oh,
You
man.
lost me on New Mutants.
yeah, well, The Fault in Our Stars isn't
Yeah.
either, but
Yeah. Teen
but
drama.
I still have high hopes for the series. It promises to. It's actually going to be about 3 hours longer than the original miniseries. It's supposed to include things from the book that were left out.
Yeah.
And the first episode has dropped. They're going to drop weekly. So we figured the next couple multimedia segments we have, we would review the series ongoing.
Yeah, why not?
And we're planning on doing other series in the future, not just this
and,
one.
I mean, in other segments. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's whatever comes about that's kind of relevant. But
Yes,
this seemed to be
yes.
relevant, and we're not going to do it episode by episode. Like this one just happened to drop.
there's only one episode
On the week
Next
right
multimedia
before.
might be 2 or 3
yeah,
episodes.
I mean,
but
Yeah.
with it being a mini series, we don't have to. I think it'll probably be even better when we put a bunch of episodes together. So let's go ahead and give our first take on what we thought. We've all seen the original, which came out in the early 90s.
I've read the book.
Keith, you're the only
Both
one of us
versions.
who have read it.
I read the original
And the
800-page
uncut.
version and the uncut 1,000 and some odd pages.
which
Oh,
is
God.
insane. It's
Yeah.
it's
The
ridiculous.
uncut version is definitely the better version, but
Really.
yeah, it's like 1,200 pages long, and then
Gosh.
the
I'm out.
original is 800. It's
Said
it's
Look at me.
fantastic.
You know I'm not going to read.
Well, heck, some of
Audiobook. That's
the
about all out
the
there.
longest Harry Potter book's over 1,000 pages. I love
Yep.
it.
Haven't read those
Yeah.
either.
But yeah, are we going to give our first?
Go
first
ahead,
impressions
Keith.
going
You're
around the
our
table?
reviewer, so you give us what you thought.
Okay, I don't.
Having read the book,
I
having
don't
seen the original.
dislike it, but I was not overtly fond of it. It's intrigued me enough that I want to see more and where they're going. I did not like how they handled some of the narrative. I didn't like the way the narrative jumps around. They start like halfway through the story with them already in Colorado, and then jump back to some of their past stories. And even jumping back to their past stories didn't bother me as much as the way they focused on the entire first episode. Mostly, I mean, it focuses on Harold, Stu, and Fran, but mostly Harold.
You got to
Yeah.
kind of explain to people who don't know these characters or this story a little bit.
That's true.
I mean,
they're
Harold,
all.
it's like, I mean, because
Well,
nobody
here's the
is.
thing. The first episode didn't really explain either. So
No.
True. You're not going to walk away from the first episode thinking, I know exactly what's going on.
no, and that's part of
Yeah.
something I disliked. I don't know if like they're banking on people already knowing the story from the original, or if that's something that's going to be. I feel like it's something that's going to be explained as it goes on.
That was my problem with the first one.
I really do think they're going to explain more of it as it goes on. I don't think they're just hoping people saw the original, but it still bothers me that not enough of it was explained right off the bat. Now, all of these characters, the story centers around the idea that this super flu, and it's really creepy. It came out this year during COVID.
Yeah.
But
well, I think that was kind of planned.
Yeah.
I know they
I
were
don't think it
already
was-
planning.
No,
They already
they
planned
had-
it. It
yeah.
just kind of
No, I'm not falling into conspiracy
Yeah.
of like, just to promote the stand, they threw COVID
I don't think
in the
they
mix.
planned it, but it did happen that production and air date wound up this
Because hell,
year.
the first thing that everybody started talking about was the stand
Yeah.
when this broke in February.
Captain Trips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, the government creates this super flu that kills 99% of the world's population. The remaining 1%.
COVID's only
Uh,
like 0.001%.
Yeah, it's nowhere
Yeah, I'm
close.
just saying.
Nowhere
Yeah.
close. But the remaining survivors band together, and there kind of becomes two factions. One for this force of good, and this faction for like God, and then this other, which is like the force of evil that kind of leads. And it comes to a
question about that.
climactic end.
In the book, is it God, or is it something else?
No, it's God.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I've never read the book, and
Yeah.
I always felt like the made-for-TV movie was kind of. I always wondered, did Stephen King actually write about
Oh yeah,
a group of
he
people
was,
that like have this full-on faith in
religious.
God, and then God,
he
saves
has
them in the
God's
end?
in a lot of his
Okay,
books, yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, he is. I think he's Methodist.
Yeah.
But yeah, and In fact, the original series actually edited some things out because they didn't want to be too religious. Like in the casino scene, I don't want to spoil too much, but at the end when they're crucifying people,
Right.
In the book they actually crucify them on crosses. In the miniseries, like they're hung up on those horseshoes or whatever, from Vegas. Which I mean, it's a fine substitute because they're in Vegas, but at the same time, I'm like. Is it like with all this stuff about God? Is it really going to be too much to show a cross in your miniseries?
Well, they might have thought they
maybe
were
they thought it'd be too
religious,
offensive. Yeah,
which is so funny because today they wouldn't bat an eye.
No, they
wouldn't
wouldn't
care.
care.
Yeah,
I bet this series has some crosses.
Well, here's the thing, though. It ultimately, I felt like my fault with the first episode was that I felt like it depended too much on either people who knew the source material or who had seen the original, and I felt like as a fresh set of eyes coming into it, it was disjointed. It was not very. I wasn't driven to want to know more about what was going on. It just seemed very frantic. And even some of the subtle scenes between some of the characters, whether they lasted or not, I thought was very contrived. It was like, okay, well, we have to have something that either moves the plot forward or to try to build some kind of character development. It didn't seem natural. The original, for one, I brought this distinction up. The teleplay was written by Stephen King himself for the original miniseries.
Okay.
And I actually thought that makes a huge difference considering that is the source. Can't get any better than the author.
Yeah.
And yet I thought this one, apparently, Keith, even you said that the whole point of this being even 3 episodes longer, or at least 3 hours,
longer,
3 hours longer than the original miniseries. The whole idea and the concept was that they would add more from the book.
They could include more
and
things
yet
that were
they
left out of the
actually
original.
changed things and kind of ended up changing things that they probably shouldn't have touched.
There were some things. I mean, I didn't like the way, like I said, the narrative jumped around because I felt like it ruined some emotional impact on like the slow buildup of the characters, like Harold, like in the relationship between Fran and Stu.
Yeah.
And I didn't. There's a significant scene in this version that I hated, based on Fran's character, where, I mean, spoiler alert, but she attempts suicide, and I just didn't like that because I felt like it was outside of her because she's a fairly optimistic character in the novel. In fact, like she is the kind of one of the characters they go to for that optimism at the end of the world. And it's like, well, the person that's supposed to be helping instill faith in everybody just tried to kill herself.
Well, no,
Right.
granted, here's the thing.
I just wondered if maybe she's not, maybe she's not there yet. And I understand. I haven't read the book, but in the original miniseries, yes, she is already a good, kind of a wholesome person,
Yeah.
and so is Stu. And so it's only fitting that they come together. But Harold, you don't ever really get a backstory in the original as to why he is the kind of conniving.
You just know he's an outcast.
Yeah, he's an outcast. He's jealous. He's and he's got a lot of torment inside. And I think this version of the miniseries is showing the reason for that.
While I liked that, what I did not like about it was I thought it came too soon. I wanted to see that build over the. I thought that was the one good thing about his character arc in the original series. Was that he starts out wanting to use the end of the world as a way to say, I'm going to live not a righteous life, but I'm going to live a life that's full and not be bullied around anymore and not resort to the way I was treated when I was younger or when all the people were treating me bad.
Yeah, I agree.
And I thought, to me, that was what the original character arc was for him, and it led him down a dark path only because it's like you started to see some of the things they show in this first episode that lead him there, but it's all coming at you so fast that I'm like, well, give me time to develop. Give me time to see him get to that
they
point.
pack a lot. Yeah.
I felt like, because I feel like in both the original and the novel, you get to this point with Harold where you feel like there is this chance of redemption where like, he is clearing out the bodies and he's like, oh, I could be a good person. And I feel like right off the cuff, this opening episode writes that off completely. He even, like, when he's writing his journal, is like, do I reach out and take this chance? It's like, no, I have to stick to revenge. And it's like, from the very beginning, they're like, they want you to dislike this character and set him up as a villain. And I'm like, but then that ruins any type of emotional impact you might have with, he's going to become good. Oh, no, he's not. So with this right off the beginning, it's like, well,
Sean, we haven't really talked about your impressions of the first episode.
Well,
I mean,
I liked it. I did not like it as much as the original. I don't really think that there's it would take a lot
to change
to be able to be able to top the original.
Yeah,
that's just because of the time frame that I watched it. Like when I was younger, It was it was on TV, and it was unlike it. It was pretty scary.
Yeah.
Even the made-for-TV version.
Agreed.
But this movie was something that even as a young person I could watch, and it was safe, and it wasn't. This newer version is definitely more gritty. It's more adult. It's more violent. It's more gruesome. Even just the virus itself and what it does to the body is much more
And I did like that.
gory than what it is
I
in
didn't
the
mind
original series. But I know I like it. I like that it showed that this is not something. This isn't just a super flu. You're not just going to get a cold and die. Like it blows up your throat and all kinds. Like it's gross.
Yeah.
And I really did like. I actually enjoyed the jumping around through time frames for the first episode. Now, I'm going to be a little disappointed if that's the route they go for every episode. I thought this is a good chance to. I did not like that it focused mainly on the one character,
On
Harold.
Harold.
Yeah.
I wish it would have focused more on some of your main characters.
I think if you're going to
but-
pick characters to focus on, Stu and Fran would be the two biggest that
But
you
then
should start
Larry
with.
and
Right.
then
But at the
Tom and,
beginning,
I mean-
even at the beginning of the original miniseries, the main characters that you're introduced to right off the bat are Stu and Fran and Harold. They're the first three that start to
Yes.
travel. Then it goes and starts showing you Larry
Glenn and Nick and
Garrett,
Larry
right.
and-
So I really feel like it. I'm not that upset that it did this in the first episode, but if it continues to do it throughout, that's gonna kind of bother me. It even introduces you right off the bat to a character that you don't know who they are. They don't even name him in the movie, but right when at the beginning, of the show, but right at the beginning when they're cleaning the bodies out, you have this leadership role person who's giving them a pep talk saying, anybody who's out, raise your hand. You're not going to be frowned upon or whatever. And
I think
it's kind of like,
all
well, who's
thinking
this
it was
guy?
Stu,
Yeah,
and it's
I thought
not.
it was Stu, but then I was like, no, I'm pretty sure Marsden is playing Stu. And so it kind of threw me.
And again, I think that was the weird juxtaposition of there were parts where I felt like, okay, they're aiming this at people who have seen it, and they're trying to subvert your expectations to throw you a different bone of like, well, we already know you know what's coming, but we're going to go this different route to kind of take you on a different journey.
Yeah.
And yet I felt like there was a little bit of, Last Jedi in there
Yeah.
of, we're going to
You need to
switch it up
subvert
just
yeah,
enough.
expectations.
subvert
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah, and I
One
thought
thing
that
I
was
love
just disappointing.
about the original is I feel like it captures like the quirks and humor and characterizations
Yeah.
that King's known for. And I'm not saying this it hasn't yet. I'm not saying it can't, but I do feel like some of that humor's lost, some of the quirks, like the small things, like which we haven't gotten to the quirkier characters like Trash Can Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we get, which
Rat
he's
Man.
being played by Ezra Miller, so who knows how that's going to turn out.
gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yes.
No.
Face.
Yes. Ezra Miller.
The Flash.
Yes, he's Trash Can Man. So I mean,
Oh
that'll
my
be
God.
that'll be interesting
Your
to
face
see.
was like, oh, this is gonna be terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, there's just like because I
Wow.
watched. We didn't watch it all. Miranda wants to finish it because she's loving it, but she never saw the original, and we started watching
It's
it.
fantastic.
and we're more
just-
than halfway
yeah.
through it.
There-
But
there is
the
an
scene
essence.
with the Rat Man, and he's like, "The Rat,
Rat
Man
Man.
forgive you
This
this time." I'm just like, I love that.
Well,
I mean,
even
it's
like
so
we were
Yeah.
joking around that brown sound sure do get around.
Yeah.
Like Larry Underwood and the whole like, baby, can you dig
dig
your
your
man?
man?
Yeah, and-
it gives it a sense of culture that
And
I don't think
some
you've
of those
explored
things
in
I
this
feel
yet.
like it hasn't yet. They
There's
still
a chance.
could.
I was gonna
but-
say this is just the pilot.
Yeah.
But it is still one of those things where, as committed as they are for the next 9 episodes, I hope the second episode seems a little bit more rooted and a little bit more like, okay, again, the reason the original worked so well was it started out with a slow pace, but you saw the unraveling of here's where everything is normal,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden this one little person who breaks out of this
Ruins
facility,
everything, yeah.
it sends everything into chaos.
And that's what I felt. I felt like this tried to introduce too much right out
Too soon.
right out the go. Because Josh Boone stated that he wanted like characters like Mother Abigail and Randall Flagg, who in the original series aren't introduced till like the second episode, and in the book they're not introduced until like over 100 pages
That's what
in.
makes them impactful.
And it's like he wanted them to be present throughout the entire narrative, so that's why he kind of did the narrative jumps so that you could get a feel for characters who aren't there at the beginning and make them be there at the beginning.
Plus,
But
I'm not
like,
going to lie. I also just, small little nitpick, I love the beginning with Don't Fear the Reaper in the
Yeah.
original, and I love when
Well,
they're
I know
sitting there
they weren't going to try to
listening.
tackle that
No,
and recreate it.
and I
but-
get it, but it's just, it's so
Some
much,
scenes they did recreate.
it's so
Yeah.
iconic.
Yeah.
And like the scene where you know, they're sitting there listening to the record, and I love Crowded House with, you know,
Yeah.
Don't Dream It's Over.
Oh,
Perfect
that's so
song,
good.
perfect moment in the original. And in this one, I didn't mind the song they were playing, but I just didn't feel that moment of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh, this is heartwarming. I just was kind of like, I think the original's better.
And I mean, we haven't
you
haven't
know.
seen enough of Alexander Skarsgård to really get a feel for him as Flag, but I did like his final scene grinning in the backseat. I thought that was very much who Randall Flagg is.
Yeah.
And we haven't had enough of Whoopi Goldberg as Mother Abigail
No.
yet. I wasn't. And maybe they'll change it for her actual delivery in the show. Like her speech that she gives, which is a monumental speech, is like kind of the opening monologue of this series. And the way she delivered it for the opening monologue, I was like, it was fine for an opening of a pilot, but if it's like how she delivers that speech when we get to that part, I feel like it's not as powering, but they might change it a bit for that scene. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. That's right. Look at the bottom of your screen. Red Moon book, Red Moon tweet, Red Moon pics, Red
man.
Moon, pop back thing.
Everything.
Red moon, red moon, red moon.
Everything. That's right. All at the bottom of your screen. And also, don't forget, yes,
I thought you were going to say,
email.
and also, don't fear the Reaper. I was like, wow.
Hey, you don't have to fear the Reaper. Don't do that. No. We also want to. Oh crap! I just threw up the social again.
Oh my God.
Well, why not? Just remind them again. I'm trying to find our email and get people to look at that one more time. There it is. RedMoonProductions.com. Go there, check out all of our stuff, all of our past reviews, other content. But RMPodcast at RedMoonProductions.com. We want to thank everybody for joining us this week. We hope you all have a very blessed Merry Christmas, and ultimately, yeah, don't fear the Reaper. It's Jesus time. That's what this year's all about.
That's right.
Alrighty, guys. That's going to do it for this episode. We hope you all enjoy and tune in next week, and we'll see you then. Until next time, I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Snapdragon heifer bows pirouette through fruit toast driven dilly twingers.
Dilly Twingers.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.